and welcome back to Offside, BarcaFutbol's YouTube channel. And this week, we are continuing our analysis of Barca's Fringe players this season, and today we'll focus on Eric Garcia.
Eric Garcia has taken the Barcelona universe by storm in the last few months. There was a lot of excitement about Eric when he first transferred from Man City, but that never really translated into something bigger than what we thought it would be. And with his transfer last year into Girona, where he played quite well, the expectation was that sooner or later Eric would be sold. But it looks like things have changed. And as things stand, Eric Garcia is a more preferred centre-back for Hansi Flick than Ronald Araujo is. And to unpack all of that and more, we thought we would take a look at some of the data, some of the graphs, and some of the insights on what makes him so important for Hansi Flick and the way Barca plays. So without much ado, let's dive in.
So what I've done here is I've divided Eric's profile scout report into 4 distinct categories. Now, I will start with Barcelona's heat map, which is on the left side here. And this heat map basically tells us the areas that Barca like to occupy the most and where there's most intensity. And for the purpose of this analysis, we're going to focus on Barcelona's first phase, which is this, right? The back line. Now, the back line is crucial for Flick because this is actually where Barca keep a lot of the ball. And this is also where Barca are very direct and very fast. So the profiles need to be extremely fitting to be able to perform these roles. And if you can see this area right here, especially in the right half space, there's a vertical channel. This is where Pau Cubarsí mostly plays, but it's also where Eric Garcia plays. And when we look at Eric's own heat map on this side over here, you can see that it replicates, it's a mimic of what the Barca heat map actually is as well, because Eric himself likes to occupy the same areas. Over here, there's a very vertical channel going from the deep area into the high danger zones. And Eric is very good at accessing these areas either through runs or through passing. See this clump of passes here? This is exactly where Eric's passes end up in. And these are the connections that Eric can make with his passing or with his runs as well. So he's very incisive, he's very courageous on the ball, and he can be vertical, he can be very quick. And Flick wants him to be exactly that. And that's why you said at the beginning, sometimes he's even preferred over someone like Ronald Araujo because he has this incisiveness in his profile. Now, I will take us to the in-game examples, but this is the face, I like to call it the face value of Eric's profile because this is actually something that everyone can see. This is the big things that he does, right? The things that are immediately noticeable when you watch Eric in the game. So we have Eric Garcia in the back line here, obviously, and what he does in this sequence is very obvious to everyone. He threads a pass that breaks the lines and goes straight into the Jong there and accesses this area between the lines, this pocket between the lines, and Eric's passing is very consistent this way. He can do this on a regular basis, and he's very good at doing it. That's why Flick wants him to be there because he's very vertical and direct when Barca need to be vertical and direct, and when they need to access key targets in key areas. Now, moving forward, it's not always the passing that he does really well. For example, look at this sequence right there. It's Barca against Alaves, and what Barca like to do is they like to rotate the team. They have to go from one side to the other like this. The play goes like that, and that creates, if you're quick enough, that creates what we would like to call a free man. Now, the free men actually here are both Kunde and Eric Garcia, but it's actually Eric Garcia that receives the ball from the Jong, and now he has all these space in front of him because Barca have managed to do this with their tactics, and what he needs to be able and willing and brave enough to do is exploit that space. And that's exactly what happens just seconds after that. If you see here, Eric has now gone into that space and connect directly with Lamine Yamal in a more dangerous and higher area of the pitch, showing courage and, again, incisiveness that Flick wants him to have. And finally here, Dev, I have something that's very minute again. This is Eric, again, setting the tempo and circulating the ball. Now, this might seem like a very simple pass. It goes from Pau Cubarsí, it goes to Eric Garcia over here, and it goes to De Jong in this area. But the technical quality, the bravery, and just the details that go into this are actually quite layered and complex because Eric has to receive the ball, open up his body, and use a single touch to access De Jong in the area to his left. Now, this is a complex scenario because it needs to be done quickly because he is, as you can see, under immediate pressure from the Alaves players. And if he doesn't do this perfectly. The ball is lost, and Alaves can then suddenly counter and do damage to Barcelona. So these are the face value things. Now, before I wrap it up, I would like to talk about the system values. System values are things that Eric does that actually affect other players on the pitch, not just himself. And I want to talk about De Jong here, Pedri, and Lamine Yamal. Now, first, let's start with Araujo and Eric in that game against Alaves. So these are their heat maps. I chose this game because it was the most fair game to analyze, because in one half you had Eric and the other half you had Araujo, and the difference was very visible. Now let's start with Araujo. Araujo was paired up with Casado, and you can see Araujo's positioning right there. You can see it's slightly deeper compared to Eric's positioning and then De Jong's positioning. That means that Casado was forced deeper to get the ball out of the back line and help that progression for Barcelona, whereas Eric was more courageous to step up, and that allowed De Jong himself to be in higher pockets and stay in that midfield zone and then combine in higher areas of the pitch. And then if we look at their connections on the left side, okay, the Pau Kubarsi and Koundé are the first two. That's normal for every center back, especially Barcelona. But next we have Araujo with Szczesny and Araujo with Lamine Yamal, compared to Eric's connection with Frenkie de Jong and Eric's connection with Pedri. This is very important because Eric was playing down the middle far more than Araujo ever could because of his in-possession quality. And when you play down the middle and access the middle zones, that's where Barca is at their deadliest. And the connections that you form there are more important, because if you go directly to Lamine Yamal, you have to access him either through a long pass from the deep, which is always going to be slower and is going to invite more pressure and quicker collapses on Lamine, or it just means that you're skipping the midfield altogether. So these connections for me with Frenkie de Jong and Pedri are far more important than it is a direct connection to Lamine Yamal, and Araujo was not able to access the middle zones as efficiently as Eric did. And when you look at Lamine's heat map, for example, this is the first half here. So all of this is first half. And you can see that he is receiving the ball more deeper areas. There's nothing there in the box actually, and there's fewer actions altogether. Whereas in the second half, look at this. Now all of a sudden Lamine can attack the box. He can be a more direct threat. He can be a more dangerous threat. And look at the number of actions that he actually does, number of passes and key passes that he does. All of this has actually increased. Now, this is not all Eric's doing, because there were more subs there. There was De Jong, there was Fermin. There's more people involved. This is a collective thing. However, Eric is the first and crucial step in the fundamental phase of Barca's play, which is the backline, the build-up phase. And I think in that regard, Eric just has the edge over someone like Ronald Araujo, and that's why Flick sometimes even prefers him. Now, obviously, there are some trade-offs, and there are some things that he doesn't do as well as Araujo does. But for that, I will pass it on to Dev, who will give us the data and direct comparison with some of the other players.
And what does some of the data talk about him here? This is in comparison to how Eric is seen across all the major five leagues that we have. And parts of it have been touched upon by Dom. Look at the percentiles for his attacking play, his pass completion, and some of those aspects that Dom just talked about. He's in the 90s in most of them. Especially the attacking instincts, NPXG, XG, goal creation, which is very rare for a centre back to have, but Eric has it in spades, at least in this season, if you compare him with most of the centre backs in the world, and we'll go into more comparisons later on. And that helps in the way Hansi Flick wants to play. What he does enables his players to play more freely, and that has an immense impact on the team. This is probably one of the reasons why, even though defensively he's not a Maldini, he's preferred by Flick. And that's quite interesting to look into and understand that how a particular coach's way of playing can suit particular players and their profiles. And that's what has happened with Eric Garcia in Barcelona. If you look into this, the luxury Barcelona have of having a goal-scoring defender, especially when games are locked or games are tied, and we have seen this in this season quite a number of times, that's huge. And it's possible because of the way he plays and because of the way Flick's Barcelona play. Take Saliba, take Van Dijk, take Schalberg. No one comes close.
It's always good to have, right? Late goals or if goals of any kind, assists of any kind, are always welcome from unexpected sources. And Eric, it would be an unexpected source of definitely of goals and final product. So it's nice to see this stuff.
Now let's look into passing. What he does very well is the majority of his passes are in that mid-range, that 20 to 30 meter range, right? And he's pretty good at that. What he's able to do is bypass that second line of press and connect right from the defense into the second phase of attack very easily. And that helps fix Barcelona a lot, much better than Araujo can do it, because Araujo is not that accurate when this passing happens. With Eric, his passing is insanely accurate in that zone. If you look at the left and you look at the short passes and the medium passes, you will see that he's very good in those areas per 90, and that's where his strength lies. While the rest might not be an equivalent strength for him, it does definitely help him to make that difference for this team, especially when we have that triangle set up at the base with Kubarsi, and you're trying to connect with, let's say, a Lamine or a Rafinha or an Olmo through the midfield. That is the ability that helps Hansi Flick's Barcelona a lot. If you think about defensiveness from that perspective, specifically if you talk about like interceptions, not really that great. Tackles one, not really that great. He does do clearances. That's his best among all his other traits in a particular game. But it's not that he's like insanely amazing in terms of being a very defensive minded. His blocks, his clearances, and his ability to just close the lines, especially, he's very good at making interceptions in the middle third of the pitch, not at the defensive third, but he makes that, he commits much earlier. He commits much before the player has created a threat within the penalty box. And that helps because he cuts out attacking threats much before they can become a threat. So that's a good thing about Eric. And then his ability to clear, but with that clearance, when you add that ability of passing in that mid-range to that slightly shorter range, that's where he becomes more necessary for Flick's Barca, even though defensively speaking, Araujo probably has more defensive traits than Eric in just pure physicality or his ability to read the game. Now, if you look into how Eric can be compared, and I've taken a few names like Eric Garcia, Christian Romero, Schalberg, from the number of defensive actions he takes in that middle third position is where he is above almost all the defensive players. If you look into all the other aspects, there are better defenders than him. So blocks and mid third is where he's comparing, and these are some of the better defenders in the world across the leagues. And you can see from the data, that's how they stack up in terms of their ability and then where he shines. So even though he's not the most defensive in this collection of defenders, the two or three things that he does very well are very important for Flick's Barca. Again, if you look into progressive receives, passes into the penalty area, miscontrols, it's not that he's very good in progressive recoveries also, or passes into the final third. He isn't. But it's that mixture that he has, which is very relevant for the team that we currently have. And then if you look into, again, his ability or goals, this is where he shines across all of them. Is the attacking aspect of a defender that we're talking about, right? So Eric Garcia, non-penalty, NPXG, XG, everything. He's better than any of the defenders globally. And this is true. You can add another 10 more names and he will be still higher from a percentile perspective. And that's crazy for a defensive-minded player who's really playing central defense for us. All right, let's keep going and look into some of the defensive duels. He does win duels. But again, if you look into where his focus areas are, zone 14, right flank, he attacks the flanks, tries to dispossess people there, tries to snuff out the threat before it becomes a threat, right? And the percentage one is actually pretty good from that perspective. In if you look into it and look at all the white dots, it simulates with where he likes playing, the zones that he likes playing, and look at the number of tackles that he does on the flank or in that middle zone ahead of that penalty area.
Yes, this is the most important thing I would still say over the goals. I think if this Eric can actually master this and be effective and efficient in these things, then we might have a real contender for the starting lineup. And it's good news, actually. Yeah, 71% duels won. It's not bad. It's really good, actually. And I like that for him.
I think Eric Garcia is a smart player who understands his limitations and his strengths and plays accordingly. And then that's what he should be doing. Kudos to him, and may it long continue. Okay, lost defensive duels in the own third, losses on the 90 are they happen when they happen. Luckily, we haven't conceded a lot of goals from this, but if you look at the XG that is created, it's quite high. It's 1 goal per match almost. Obviously, areas of important or things that Eric can improve on. That dangerous losses is concerning, but losses on his own third per 90 also, if you look, it's quite high on this side. So that happens. But thankfully, given the way we play or Barca play, it hasn't really affected us that much. And my belief is that the more he plays, this part of his game will improve over time. And as it improves, he'll become a much more rounded midfielder a rounded defender from that perspective. Recoveries, again, is on the right-hand side. So yes, he does a lot of recoveries, which is, again, compared by the data that we showed. So interceptions, his blocks, and his clearances are quite good. So he does spend a lot of time in recoveries and does that well, which augurs well for Barcelona, especially when they're playing a high line and we are susceptible to a lot of transitions, right? Being able to contribute to that press, being able to recover those balls. And you look at the counter pressing that he has, about 136. That's quite impressive, the counter pressing and the interceptions that he has. So from that graft that he puts in, the time, the effort, and the graft throughout the pitch, and you can see the heat map is everywhere, almost till the second or the first line of attack. His ability to roam up and down and be involved in the game and involved in the press is pretty amazing. And that really impacts. I think Flick likes people or players who are able to commit to that degree. And that's quite interesting about Eric Garcia, because he's not the most physical, neither is he the most fastest, for sure, but he does cover a ton of ground, and he does put in a serious amount of shift in how many recoveries he's doing and how he's getting involved in the press in the game. Losses, again, not too many, right? Which is good. But look at the Reds near the penalty box. That is a little bit scary. But as I said, this, I think, will improve. And it's not that other defenders don't have it. They have it too. Thankfully, it has not caused us to concede a lot this season. Yes, there are goals, but that goals have been scored because of faults by everyone. So we can't really pick on him from that perspective. And that shouldn't be right, because he's done a lot better. Like, he's been good in so many other aspects of the game that this probably is not that to be worried about if you see his season right at this moment. The only thing that I feel is that Eric Garcia hasn't started that many number of games. So if you look at the number of starts that he has had compared to all the elite central defenders and the minutes he has played, to the number of mistakes that he has done in that final third, that's a little bit concerning. So should we just give up on somebody like Araujo and be content with Eric Garcia? Probably no. But there are games in which both of them can be, I think, useful. Now, is anybody the consistent starter? I would say at this moment, no. And I don't know whether next season it will change or not. But I think for now, they're both squad players who will be used for their particular skills in particular games, as the case may be. Passing in key areas, here, Eric is absolutely amazing, right? And that Dom talked about earlier as well. This is what makes him stand out. This and his attacking ability compared to defenders of his kind. His contribution to XG chain, insane. His passes per 90, the pass accuracy, right? His ability in picking out those passes, his ability in stitching those connections, his ability to connect with the Lamines of the world and the Olmos of the world and release them. That's what makes him so important for this Barca and the way this Barca wants to play.
Being so incisive and being so courageous on the ball is what usually makes the difference and makes the whole team tick better. That improves his teammates as well. And to me, this is what Eric Garcia is all about.
This is what Eric Garcia is all about. Again, progression is very good in that middle range of passing, and that's important, especially when we are playing a huge high line all the time. There's massive distances to cover, and if you are just left ball circulating, then the pace of the game does not pick up, because, as Dom often says, the ball travels faster than the feet. As of now, it's working for Barca. As of now, Araujo is also probably not at his fittest from both a mental perspective or a physical perspective. So I think for a majority of the season, I think we're going to see a lot of Eric Garcia in this season, at least, whether it be in La Liga or Copa del Rey or Champions League. And we'll need that because we are still competing in all the cups. And Garcia can be a huge value add to the defense that we have.
Absolutely. I think it shows that Flick is actually taking Araujo off and putting Eric in. I think that just shows you that how important the profile is and how important that he can actually perform the roles that Barca center backs in this particular system need to perform, because Barca are the most vertical, they're the most quickest and direct in that back line, and you have to be able to play that part perfectly to retain a spot in Flick's team. Because if you don't fit Flick's ideas, because he is a purist in that way, right? He values certain things over others, and he will die on that hill, so to speak. So if you don't fit those ideas, he won't shy away from discarding you altogether. So that's why some players are outcast, so to speak, quote unquote, and some players are always preferred over them. And I think Eric at the moment is turning out to be a very valuable and very efficient part of the squad, the whole jigsaw that is Barcelona under Flick's tactics. So I think that's why he is preferred at the moment. Now, does Flick value that over a defensive solidity? Perhaps at times he does, when he can actually he can afford that. But maybe there will come a time when he won't be able to afford that. Maybe sometimes you will have to go for an Araujo over Eric, and we'll see. That's what makes both of them squad players, as you said, because they are more situational at this minute. But there you go, guys. This is it for Eric Garcia this week. I hope you enjoyed it. We did a bit of tactics, bit of data, and does seem that Eric is really stepping up when things are starting to go into this crunch time of the season. So long may it continue, and long may this form be crucial for Barcelona, and long may Barca actually keep winning with Eric in the lineup.